Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley and Drew Mentok from Irish Illustrated, joined by Pete Sampson of The Athletic. It's Thursday, October 3rd, the first bye week of the season. It was much needed for Notre Dame as they try to get a little bit healthier. We're going to talk about a little bit about the remaining 7 opponents just briefly. We got a bunch of good questions in segment 2. Talk about a new basketball commitment for the men's program, which is some really exciting stuff happening there. But we want to start with the decommitment of Deuce Knight from Notre Dame, his follow-up commitment to Auburn. I want to start with Pete Sampson because Pete Sampson had the opportunity a few months back to go see Deuce Knight in Lucevale. What is it?
Loosedale.
Lucedale, Mississippi. So you can speak about this. Nobody is surprised that he decommitted from Notre Dame. Nobody is surprised that he is supposed to go to Auburn. Nobody would be surprised if he went somewhere other than Auburn. Uh, Pete, tell us a bit about
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yes, everything is on the table, is what you're saying.
it is, but Notre Dame is not, and the nonsense and the silliness with that really needs to come to an end. Anyway, your perspective on Deuce with the time that you spent with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very engaging personality. I think he would have fit at Notre Dame, but he is certainly off profile at the same time. And I said this to somebody at Notre Dame. I was like, look, Notre Dame has had more off profile kids than Deuce Knight on the roster, but none of them have been quarterbacks before. And I think that's complicated because of the nature of the position and how much work goes into it. But also because like that's the ringleader of your class. He's not a luxury take. You built your class around a kid from Lucedale, Mississippi. And there aren't a lot of kids from Lucedale, Mississippi on the Notre Dame football roster ever. So that's difficult for Notre Dame. At the same time, he is a lottery ticket type of prospect because there's just not somebody put together like him on the Notre Dame roster, and there maybe never has been at the quarterback position. So I get why they chased him down, but I do think they're you got to take a step back if you're Notre Dame and be like, all right, was this worth the hunt? And I don't know if there's a right answer for it, honestly.
I think it was worth the hunt, separate or opposite of the Dante Moore saga, where you really were on the ground floor, Pete, saying this is never worth the hunt. Like if we're talking about, I think it was May and there were issues. You're like, if we're talking about this in July, there's a major problem. We were talking about it well into July. But if he was off profile, but as you said, he was also that type of guy that would have fit in. So I think it was worth the hunt. I think it stopped being worth the hunt in the last 2 months or 6 weeks, whatever the actual time. Yeah, whatever the time frame is. It was kind of like when Tyson Ford decided to go to the transfer portal. I forgot that he hadn't been in the transfer portal. A couple weeks ago, I forgot when I was going over the list that Deuce Knight had not decommitted. So the decommitment wasn't as big of a deal. The issue I have is it was going to work at Notre Dame at least for 1 year, because if CJ Carr wins the job next year and Deuce Knight was his alternate quarterback in the much better Tyler Buckner mode of being an alternate quarterback, they're disparate players. That would have worked great. It's not like trying to fit CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr and Steve Angeli in together. It would have actually been a weapon Notre Dame could have had for 1 year. It never would have lasted 2.
No, it wouldn't have. And I don't think there's any doubt that he was concerned about the presence of CJ Carr and the way how well respected CJ Carr is by the coaching staff and what they think his future is. Drew, what's your perspective on what has happened with Deuce Knight Notre Dame?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Pete and Tim said. Like, it was probably something that was starting to drag on too long, and they needed. I think it's good that they're in a position now where it's early October. They have a better chance to kind of pivot to somebody else. It's not something that drug out until December, and now they're really scrambling trying to figure it out. So I think ultimately it's probably good that this didn't drag out any further. And I think going back to like why you pursue him, I mean, like you said, he's a very unique talent. There's not many people in all of college football playing that position put together like him. So I think it's something that could have worked, could have sat behind CJ Carr for a little bit, kind of needed some development as a passer. So there was like an argument for him to not be ready right away too, that maybe he didn't buy into, but I think probably would have been good for his development.
And we'll let our recruiting guys, Kevin Sinclair and Eric Thomas, weigh in on the alternatives at quarterback without Deuce Knight. But moving on to some other things, during the bye week, how we all are, you're looking to do something a little bit different. You've been in the pattern of what you do on Monday through Sunday with game week. And I was just looking at, wondering where the remaining 7 opponents, the 5 that Notre Dame's played in Notre Dame, where's everybody rank offensively and defensively in the major categories? And I fully realize that, somebody like Louisville stats are a little bit out of whack because they played Austin P and Jacksonville State, and that applies to everybody. I'll probably do something again here in 3 weeks when they have another break. But as I looked at it, and this is what struck me, the perspective that, okay, Riley Leonard's struggling, the offense is struggling, it's not going to get better the rest of the year. But then you start looking at the opponents Notre Dame has remaining, and there are 5 pretty bad, not in every category, but 5 pretty bad pass defenses in Georgia Tech, Navy, Florida State, Virginia, and Stanford. That's 5 of the 7 opponents. So there's a chance here for Riley Leonard in the passing game to get a little bit healthier as they move through October and November. Maybe that's a little bit more wishful thinking, but I think many times we just look at, okay, it's Notre Dame. How are they going to get better? Well, there is an opponent involved, and there are varying degrees of levels of good opponents and bad opponents, and I think there's some ground to be made up. I'm just not sure, and we've said it, I don't know if I said this in our podcast, but I've said it to some people. Is Riley Leonard good enough for Notre Dame to win ultimately what would be their last 10 games of the year? I'm not sure. And then you throw in the offensive line, which I want to get into a little bit more in segment 2. I just don't know that the offense is good enough for that even to be feasible, no matter how good Notre Dame's defense is.
Yeah, I think this is more of the question of the offense, not only Riley Leonard, because as you pointed out on our last podcast, I mean, the offensive line is paramount in this. The offensive line has to be better too. I still haven't found out. I figured from talking to Mike Denbrock that Jadarian Price is a little bit culpable in having more stuffs than his cohorts are, but you are a victim of every block that's supposed to be made in front of you when you're Jadarian Price too. So I'm certainly not putting the onus on him. I think the offense can get better. These were the best, other than USC, these are the best defenses Notre Dame was going to face. I mean, Florida State's still the second best defense left by a pretty wide margin.
It is unbelievable how awful their numbers are. It is unreal. Both sides.
USC, it's like top 25 in efficiency defense. Everybody else is 47, 52, 68, 73, 80. You got to be able to get better against this schedule. Now, USC is a tough game, man. They're top 10 offensive efficiency and top 25 defensive efficiency. The key for them for the Irish and USC has a lot harder road in front of them. They could be really dragging by the time that game takes place.
Yeah.
Florida State on the schedule is basically where you were with Deuce Knight being committed. I keep forgetting Florida State is actually on the schedule because they've been just so awful. But I think Notre Dame's offense can get better. The offensive line has to get better. But I thought we saw enough like flashes of Riley Leonard last week to be like, okay, I can sort of see where this is going beyond just like short passes and quarterback runs. Like there was like a snap on the first drive where he got flushed to his left, kept his eyes downfield, and found Jaden Greathouse along the sideline. Like he hadn't done that the first 4 weeks. He should be able to do that all the time. But if that light's on now, then I think the offense can be pretty good, decent. Certainly good enough to win to go to USC with just 1 loss.
Yeah, Drew, you wrote a piece earlier this week, and I touched upon some of those topics in my tail of the tape. I get all mixed up. No, it was earlier in the week. Tail of the tape. And I mean, there's a limit as to how good Riley Leonard can be. But there have been some promising signs. In the last 6.5 quarters, he's completed 71% of his passes. He's protecting the football. He's running the hell out of it. He's doing some good things. And Louisville's a good defense. He didn't put up huge numbers because I thought that they kind of took the air out of the ball in the second half. But it was something similar to what I was saying on Monday. I think there's progress. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I agree there's progress. And I think even his willingness and some of the effectiveness of him pushing the ball down the field has definitely been better. I mean, even I think I did in counting pass interference calls, I think he's had a little over 200 yards gained with those penalties too, pushing the ball down the field, which considering he's not taking a lot of those throws, that's, fairly effective and I think helps open up some other aspects of the offense as well. And I agree, like the schedule kind of should give him more opportunities to kind of improve and test the offense. And even with, we were talking about USC earlier, something else I looked at is that's a game they probably don't need to necessarily even be super effective throwing the ball to compete with offensively, because I think what Michigan went 7 for 12 passing for 32 yards that game and ran for 290. They're definitely one of the worst rush defenses in the country. So that's even if that's somebody they were worried about passing the ball with, they don't necessarily need to have that much success there in that game. So
Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Go Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best, from a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season. Check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. We're going to finish up segment one, Notre Dame's men's basketball recruiting. I said a couple times, I think I wrote it today. One day you wake up and Notre Dame men's basketball is relevant. It's a little bit surprising, but they added a fourth to the class. Tommy Oneman is a 6'10" banger out of St. Paul, out of Cretan Durham, and I don't know how much he moves. The video on him is pretty limited. It's pretty much around the bucket. He's a big dude. One thing, Tim, the one thing that he does really, really well is he keeps the ball above his head. He rebounds. He doesn't bring it back down. He rebounds. He puts it back up. So he's fairly skilled in the moves around the bucket. I'm not sure how well he runs the court yet, or what kind of shooting range he has. It looks like most of his highlights are right around the rim, which is okay too. They need a guy like that.
Yeah, and the key is he doesn't have to hit as an absolute freshman either, because they're starting to build some quality depth on the team. You would think there'd be less relevant transfer portal hits than there have been the last couple of years. Now that they're, I don't think Marcus Burton's going anywhere other than trying professional basketball at some point. The key, thank goodness he's not taller than he is, because he'd be gone after this season in the NBA.
Why,
now he has to
that's
decide.
why you're hopeful he will be there next year when these guys come back.
In. And then I think at that point he would probably give it a shot and consider Europe and all those things, because he's a heck of a basketball player. But yeah, I think the key is when you're stacking players, you don't need them to immediately contribute. You want them to contribute a little because that keeps them around, but you don't absolutely need that development. Like the last 2 seasons, you could just tell guys were not ready to play at that level. That won't be the case.
Yeah. All right, we'll be back. Segment 2 coming up, burning up the boards.
If you're coming to a game this season, you have to check out Game Day Your Way, Notre Dame's tailgate service provider. Game Day offers everything you need, including tailgate gear, catering, and even beverage delivery right to your spot. And their Irish Express transportation from Chicago allows you to tailgate while you travel to their all-inclusive party zone in South Bend. Let Game Day deal with all the hassle so you can focus on the fun. For tailgates, tickets, transportation, and more, visit GameDayYourWay.com.
Welcome back to segment 2, burning up the boards. Our first question is from N. Venturini. That's right. Boubacar Traore injury update. He needs one. We don't have an official one, but Tim Priester.
He's hurt badly, and we expect him to miss the balance of the year. Notre Dame obviously will announce something on Monday. Haven't heard anything quote official, but it's horrible news for obviously Boubacar, but the Notre Dame pass rush is really diminished by that. He's really a very special talent. And so now guys like Junior Tuihalamaka has to step up big time. Logan Thomas has to do some things, and nobody's moving. I mean, you're not moving Sneed or KVA to the position, but you're going to move them to the edge. to do some pass rushing. But it's it's an awful blow for the Notre Dame defense moving forward.
It's an awful blow for the Notre Dame fans too. That's what really.
Yeah, it is.
is.
It is.
He was fun to watch.
Jumping ahead to the BL Casper question, am I being foolish to want Gerby Lambert to get a real shot to move into the starting lineup at left tackle? Nothing against Anthony Knapp. I just want a butt kicker over there.
So I went back. Anthony Knapp is the lowest in PFF, the lowest rated starter on Notre Dame's offense. And his ranking was so low that I was like, I need to go back to figure out when's the last time they had an offensive starter rated lower than him, which I found one in 2017, and it was Robert Hainsey, which I was like, okay, maybe this is a better way to look at this, that freshman offensive linemen aren't that good because they're freshman offensive linemen, and you're not going to improve a freshman offensive lineman who plays by replacing them with a freshman offensive lineman who hasn't. But I get it. Like Gerby Lambert, I think has a chance to be a really good player. But he's not better than Knapp just because Knapp has not played all that well. Again, because he's a freshman.
Yeah, I think there's growing pains that you've started to deal with Knapp that maybe you're starting to pay dividends too. I mean, last game he was the only offensive lineman who started who didn't give up pressure too, and that was a pretty good Louisville front that he faced. So maybe there's some growth you're starting to see, and then you might be restarting that with Lambert because he enrolled over the summer and isn't used to that game speed and all that stuff, and you'd maybe just be starting back at square one in that regard.
I had a few weeks, I don't know how long, a couple weeks ago, I had speculated about, they were considering, they're looking at some other things. Maybe somebody gets a series, and it never happened. But what has now happened is there's been a bye week. And so, I think there's a possibility. This was the deal. Gerby Lambert, they knew physically that's the guy you want on the field, but he didn't arrive until June, and there was some catching up to do. I think they feel like Lambert has narrowed that gap, and physically he's the guy that you want, whether it's left tackle or right tackle. So I wouldn't be shocked if they made that move. I think it's a little bit risky, consider you invested 5 games into Anthony Knapp. Likewise, and I'm not really sure. I don't know that we know exactly the extent of what Sam Pendleton's dealing with, but they do like Sullivan Absher. I'm not sitting here saying that they're in game 6, they're going to make the change again on the left side, a complete change. But I don't think they've closed the door completely on the guys that have been in the starting lineup up to this point.
Yeah. The interesting thing for me replacing Knapp.
It would be Absher and Lambert if they were to make a move.
The interesting thing for me about replacing Knapp is if you're going to use Pro Football Focus, which you can't only use it to prove 1 point, you have to use it to prove all points, right? Either don't use it or do. That was his best game. He was the number 1 ranked pass blocker on Notre Dame's team against Louisville. Now, he was lower than everybody else almost every other game. So is it going up, or is the growth like this? Of course, you don't know. But, I know Pro Football Focus, we have heard from many people, is it's really hard to rank somebody's player ratings is not their strong suit, I think most coaches would say. So if we're going to say that Anthony Knapp is the lowest ranked, well, he was the highest ranked this week. So it's a tough situation. I'd love to see Gerby Lambert jump in there because Gerby Lambert will probably be the starter next year at the left tackle position. So but if you're looking for continuity, it makes it tough, right, to jump there now. I mean, the bye week's a great point, though. You can start gaining new continuity with Gerby Lambert as your starter if you so choose over the next few games. From inside insane ND Tucson, Leonard Moore stepped in admirably last Saturday in a crunch. He's a solid number 3 quarterback. Do you see his projection similar to Benjamin Morrison, which is 3 years and a likely first-round pick?
I think it's a little early to be jumping into that. He just started 1 game, but I think the kid's got a lot of ability. He's long. He's longer than his actual height. He has long arms. He plays aggressively. He has good technique. 76 snaps last week, Tim. You believe that?
What an effort to be thrown into that.
To start. Your frontline players don't play that, generally speaking. I thought he did for first time through, it was an outstanding job.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has first round draft pick ability, but he has a chance to be a really quality starting cornerback for Notre Dame. He probably falls back into the number 3 role with Christian Gray coming back from an injury, but that's a good trio they're putting out there now.
Yeah, I mean, he's hopefully a 3-year starter for Notre Dame. Three and out is really rare, and I don't think we've seen enough from Leonard Moore to make you think that's likely, but that's fine. Like 3-year start, like I would take Leonard Moore as a 3-year starter. That's good. Maybe he'll have a career more like Cam Hart, just a little bit healthier. When I see him lengthwise, he's not as big as Hart, but he reminds me a little bit more of a longer, bigger corner than he does Morrison, who is very, very unique in every way.
Quickly,
Yeah,
guys.
and I think
go ahead, Drew.
with Morrison too, like thinking back to his freshman year, I mean, he's a son of a former NFL player. I think just even from the technique and polish and stuff like that, he was much more advanced. And there's, as well as Leonard Moore played against Louisville against some really good receivers, like he still has some technical development that I think even at this point Morrison was further along.
Yeah, if we do Pro Football Focus as our launching pad for rankings, the number one ranked defensive player in Benjamin Morrison's freshman year was Benjamin Morrison on the football team.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Drew, I mean, good point. For Leonard Moore to come in, I guess we got a Moore and a Morrison now. For Leonard Moore to come in and start against that team, against that group of receivers, and then they throw Colin Lacey in the equation. That's a good group, man. That's a really good group. And the 76 snaps that he had, he was aggressive from the outset. He was physical. He was on point. This is really impressive.
What's interesting is we're all saying like Benjamin Morrison was ahead, he was ahead and everything like that. He was, but Benjamin Morrison's first game,
yes, thank
was
you for
Ohio
noting
State
this.
and Marvin Harrison and Igbuka and anybody. It was actually
Was our quarterback any good? I can't remember.
Like Benjamin. So this is actually a good comparison. They both got thrown in against the best guys they'd face, if you look at it that way. But that was Benjamin Morrison's first start at Ohio State.
That's quite a baptism by fire. Bobby 1556. Does the coaching staff not see Jeremiah Love as a back that can handle 20 to 25 carries a game? Or do they just not want to get him killed running that much behind a patchwork offensive line? Seems like there are long stretches in games where he doesn't get any touches.
Part of it's the QB, right? Part of it's the quarterback, Riley Leonard.
20 to 25 carries is.
So I did a quick thing. I'll just do this for my part speaking here. 20 to 25 carries. Kyron Williams averaged 17. Audric Estime 17.5. Dexter Williams 17.5. Only 9 games though. Josh Adams 15.8. This is all their best years. Theo Riddick 14.6. Sierra Woods 16.7. Darius Walker was the leader. 19 carries a game in 06. I believe their backup running back was a bad linebacker. And Julius Jones was only 19 when he was the only player on the football team in 2003 that had offensive success. So you're not getting that again. I agree with this first question, or I agree with the question, though. I would like to see more from Jeremiah Love in terms of opportunity.
Yeah, but we're talking 2 or 3 touches a game, not 10. Like he's averaging 13.6 touches a game, receiving and carries. And we should probably throw targets in there. I'm not really sure if that would bump it up to 14 and a half or not, but 16, 17.
One more touch per quarter.
Yeah. I don't think Jeremiah Love's touches are as like criminally underused as I think some fans think that they are. I think there's a slight adjustment up with Love, but it's not some huge change in, I think, game planning that Notre Dame needs there.
Yeah, and I also think McCullough has made it very clear that he doesn't want high usage for his running backs. Even I went back and looked at the quote before the season, but like he said, part of his recruiting pitch for Jeremiah Love was like, we don't want you to have to carry the ball 20, 25 times a game. Like his mom was very adamant, particularly, I guess, about like, we don't want him to be burnt out while he's in college. So I don't think that's something they want to see, but I agree with you. Like he could be doing a little bit more.
I also like the idea of when, Tim, you said one more carry a quarter. I know Mike Denbrock answered it, and he's completely right. Mike Denbrock's like, it's a read option. Riley Leonard makes the read. He normally makes the right read. It's not like we call the play. I think for a talent like Jeremiah Love, you can call one play a quarter. That's how I would kind of back up your assertion that maybe there is one toss sweep to Jeremiah Love per quarter, or definite throw to Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, and there's always a typical reaction. Obviously, Jadarian Price is coming off his worst game. He got benched. He fumbled. He's had too many stuffs as inefficient runs, as you have pointed out, Tim. But he's still a talent. I mean, he's still a young running back that really hasn't had an opportunity, and we know he's a good player, so you don't just exclude him. And I'm all for, again, it depends upon how many snaps you're getting per game, but I'm all for seeing Aeneas Williams carried a little bit more because everything that he's done has been pretty impressive. As a blocker, he's been way better than most freshman running backs, and he's been productive with most of. He's only had like half dozen touches or carries, but yeah, you don't want to. And it doesn't matter whether you're running behind a great line or one that's still developing like they have. You don't want to take a talent like Jeremiah Love and just throw him to the wolves. Estime had 210 carries last year. That's a lot. He would tell you that was by the end of the season.
Still 17 catch, just 17 carries a game though. Right. 17.5. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, you got to be smart about it.
Next from Can't Upchuck, stock up or stock down on the players based on where they started in the preseason. I will go, I'll just read them off one by one. Jordan Clark.
Way up.
Way up, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Christian Gray.
Yeah, definitely.
Way up as well.
As good as we thought he was going.
Either way up or stock hold. We thought he was going to be. I mean, we could give ourselves credit once in a while. I thought Christian Gray was going to be great, considering we're going to be taking away credit from ourselves later on. Exactly where we thought Christian Gray, top 10 player. Jack Kaiser.
I'd hold. I don't think he's kicked on the way that he would have wanted at this point.
No, still leading the team in tackles. Doesn't maybe make. His plays don't quite jump out like JD Bertrand's did, I guess.
And like Jack Kaiser's used to, I think.
Yeah, probably true.
Pretty big plays.
He got banged up last week. So again, a lot of times we're judging based upon, he didn't have big numbers against Louisville and didn't show up. He was hurt for part of that. So I don't know. Not a guy that's going to, even when he's playing well, that's going to really look flamboyant out there.
Jalen Sneed.
Down.
Yeah, down 12 snaps. That's an indication of how the Notre Dame defensive coaching staff felt about him playing against a really good offense in a game that Notre Dame had to win.
Plus, the way he seemingly handled it after the game doesn't give me confidence that's going to increase in the near future.
Agreed. Yeah. Did you see it? Did any of you guys actually see him?
I did not see that happen.
I didn't see that at all. There was too much happening.
I should have. I was standing right down there, so I didn't see that, but I saw the near scuffle happening between.
Well, that's more fun.
The two teams. Yeah, that was interesting. I didn't even want to take the time to get my phone out and try to record it because I just wanted to watch it. I know you were too, Pete. Yeah. Anyway, move on, Tim. Who we got
Emil
next?
Wagner.
Up. I thought he'd be good, and he's better than that.
Yeah, I don't. Has his rating been? Again, that's a player rating by PFF. I think to the naked eye and rewatching the game on Sundays, I think he's been pretty good. I don't think there have been a whole lot of egregious, missed assignments.
No, I think there was a couple snaps where he went against Gelati and Gelati shoved him back. That's okay. That happens.
Yes, it is.
But it's I kind of forget he's out there, which is that's high praise for an offensive lineman.
Yeah, no, it is. And speaking of why Anthony Knapp graded poorly, Gelati.
Jadarian Price. Bad timing for the question here, but Jadarian Price. I mean, we had him top 10, so stock down a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so.
You have to be fair.
Yeah, down.
Yeah.
Raritan, I don't think
down.
Down.
Down. I mean, we've always been impressed just with the way he looks on a football field, but he hasn't produced at that level. And Rendell
down overall, but the last two games have been the good. That's good.
You got that 48-yard roll. You can say that's a lousy punt, but if they consistently roll to 40 plus yards, then I mean,
He had one poor punt this past game that they needed a field flip. I said to you, they need a field flip right here.
yeah, and
And
it
they
was
just
yeah,
flipped field.
it was
Yep.
the wrong one to have it was the last one
Yep.
when Louisville had an opportunity. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, but I guess we all were a little mesmerized watching him punt
yeah,
in
no doubt.
fall camp. So I guess based on that assessment, then I would say down. But I feel like he's coming on. And even some of the punts we complain about, like they don't get returned, and he does know how to get that roll forward. So
We talk. I know that some of the our readers have talked about receivers who hasn't stepped forward. Great House and Jaden Thomas and Sir Chris Mitchell. A lot of that's tied. That's really tied to the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. It's when you're judging wide receivers, you have to look at the peripheral aspects of it too, and they're at the mercy of those two guys a lot as well.
Next from Drecker Wrecker 4, as we enter this new age of college football with the 12-team playoff, I'd say we all agree that for ND to remain healthy, relevant program, they must consistently be in the playoff contention year in and year out. In your opinion, what does Notre Dame's hit rate need to be in terms of actually making the playoff field for a successful era? Every other year, 3 out of 4, or every year? I think we all agree it's not once every 4 years. So this is a good question. Those are good percentages.
No, I think it's a great question. I'm sort of in the 2 out of 3 camp. Like if you get a 10-year sample size and they made it 6 or 7 times, I think that's pretty realistic. And assuming you did something in the playoff, like this isn't just making the NCAA tournament and losing in the first round 6 times.
Who did that?
I can't think of anybody, but you got to make it 6 or 7 times, but then you got to deliver once you're there too. It's not just about making it.
Drew, what do you like? What do you think is because Notre Dame, if it's not 100%, it's not going to be acceptable. They expanded to 12 teams. How could they not make the playoffs?
I mean, I wrote down 50%, like at the minimum. I think. I mean, I'm kind of curious how some of these things shake out because there are, automatic teams that get in. And I mean, this isn't really answering the question, but I'm curious on how the format changes going forward in terms of automatic bids and stuff like that. So I think even with that, you want to see them being, 50%. I mean, they could make it, every once in a while under Brian Kelly when it was just 4 teams. So we still need to see them making it, but I think 50% would be the minimum.
All right. So obviously they wouldn't have made it the last 2 years. What about 2018 through 2021, 4 seasons?
They would have made it. They were 13th in 2019 because of that Michigan loss. They would not have made it in 19 because of that Michigan loss, which would have been really bad if you think about it. But they would have made 3 out of 4. They would have made 3 out of 4, and they would have just missed because of losing to Stanford in 17. So it would have been 3 out of 5, starting with the Freeman era.
Yeah,
and
I mean they would have made it in 2015, obviously not in 2016. So you're going to lump that in there too. You can.
Yeah, so and actually, Pete, there's your 10 years. They would have made it in 2012. They would have made 6 times in 10 years, right there.
Yeah.
I want to say this because I want to agree with Pete, especially with his point. Notre Dame can go 50% making the playoffs if they win a playoff game every time, or win 2 playoff games the second time, or one time win 3 playoff games. Because I want to remind people right now, you're still not in the final unless you win that 3rd playoff game. That is a lot. That's a tough road, man.
Yeah, it is. We have a question from Paul WND. Steve Angeli is a good quarterback, but I believe Notre Dame should be getting CJ Carr ready. We were told he's the second coming of insert great former quarterback. Texas isn't holding back Arch Manning. What say you guys?
I just want you to insert a great former quarterback, Tim, because I had one on the tip of my tongue.
Go for it.
Who do you think CJ Carr is the best prospect since? It's CJ Clausen. It's CJ Clausen. It's Jimmy Clausen, right?
Clausen, yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Also, Arch Manning isn't being held back because Quinn Ewers is hurt.
I think they're saying that Angeli would be number 2 if Riley Leonard were hurt. That's the question.
Okay, but I mean,
No, the question is if Riley Leonard's hurt,
Second
Steve
year,
Angeli's
isn't
the
it?
backup. Shouldn't CJ Carr be the backup? Is the question.
Is Arch Manning in his second year? Isn't he? Isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know it seems like CJ Carr might be in his second year, but he's not.
Also, he's freaking Arch Manning. Like, I like CJ Carr, but give me like, come on.
Yeah.
Also, Notre Dame didn't have the transfers that I believe Texas did for Arch
Yes.
Manning's first year. Like Hudson Card went to Purdue, which
Malik Murphy went to Duke.
created
Like,
created room for him to move up, which I don't think that you know Notre Dame kept
But
all four quarterbacks.
that's a great point. Notre Dame, against all odds, kept all 4 quarterbacks, Drew, because nobody would have taken that bet last February.
They're going to look, the coaching staff will look at CJ Carr differently in the spring of 2025 and moving forward. Right now, as a true freshman, I know he's been around the program. He came in early. He was all part of the bowl prep, but there's some politics that have to be played along the way too, with guys like Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchie here coming up when they get to the offseason. So point taken, but CJ Carr he'll rise to the top. He'll have an opportunity to start next year.
From ND Yinzer, how do you assess the inconsistencies and struggles on special teams this year? Anything to the fact that Biaggi took on additional roles with the safeties? There's been muff punts, blocked field goals, poor punting, fumbled kickoffs. That is a lot, actually, for the
It is a lot of bad.
games.
A lot of bad.
Yeah.
A lot of bad. Drew, what do you think?
I don't know if there's anything to his additional responsibilities. I mean, it's hard for me to say when I'm not at all the practices, but there's a lot of periods of time where he would just be like kind of in the inside the practice facility watching them kick or something. Otherwise, like it's not like especially with some of those other aspects, they only work on it so much during practice and he's there for that. So I don't know about that. But I don't really know what to make about that. Like you guys said, that is a lot of things that have gone wrong on special teams. And it kind of, even as they seem to fix one thing, punting seems to get better, then they have these other issues start showing up. So that is definitely a concern.
Yeah, there's just so many moving parts. I mean, the change at short snapper that lasted one snap is kind of like that doesn't give you a good vibe about just the overall evaluation of the operation. But I don't think that Marty Biaggi helping with safeties has anything to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, Devin Ford fumbled on the opening kickoff. I don't know how that's Marty Biaggi's fault.
Right. You could argue that he did his coaching when he had to bench him.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's part of coaching.
The muff punt. I mean, Faison was crowded a little bit.
I asked Biaggi about the muff punt, actually. He said, we need to be aware. It was Jaden Mickey, by the way, so that won't happen again.
Yep.
But he said we need to be aware and help give our guys a clean path. He was not blaming Jordan Faison on that one.
I think Max Hurlman is the man for the job. End of story, unless something goes south on that. But
we should point out too that they offset the worst play of the game, the fumble kickoff, with the best play of the game. Not blocking that punt, but Faison gained 27 yards by running into the punter on that fumble recovery. That was big, and they moved Faison to that role for that game.
Yeah, I was like, one thing that is dated now, but like when I was at Miami, I sat in their special teams coordinator's office and just like, hey, what do you think of Notre Dame special teams? Like the punter's really struggling, kind of finding himself. And I was like, yep. And I was like, what do you think of their punt returners? Because at that point, it's still Great House. And he's like, they don't look confident at all. Like it looked like a very uncertain group to him on tape. So the fact that they made a change like is colored in my mind a little bit by the fact that an opposing coach was like, just didn't like the look of Great House returning punts, which is not something I thought about a whole lot in August.
No, that's a body language thing, and I don't think there's any problem with Max Hurlman's body language. He looks very confident out there, doesn't he?
He's like the next Salerno.
You're being a smart ass, Pete.
Chris Salerno is he going to take his job too? We're going to keep moving people around. This is.
I mean, that's not.
He was compared to Zibikowski in the media room, by the way.
I think he was. He kind of had some of the tackle breaking ability there.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. Biaggi, an ND fan back in the day, was like, I know who you're talking about. He was pretty excited.
I think Hurlman has a chance to be a better, more elusive punt returner than Salerno was. You'd agree with that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was killing.
I'm just saying, like, you recruit all these 4-star athletes,
I know.
and you can't find a punt returner from that group. Is like,
I know.
this is kind of a 10-year running joke.
You gotta go recruit in Colgate during the off season to get your punt.
Couldn't compare him to Chris Fink too, Pete. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, no, they're both very coachable, I'm sure.
Hey, Fink was recruited as a walk-on though to
Yeah,
play.
Jim Rat, real film junkie, all that stuff.
Question from Statman72. Building on Irish from A2's comments on your preseason counting down the Irish series, how many of the top 10 through 5 games would remain in your top 10?
I'll let you
Benjamin,
guys go because I did a top 15 for Monday Musings, so I have it in
Okay.
front of me. So why don't you guys go first?
Benjamin Morrison was listed number 1. I think we all agree he'd still be in the top 10. Howard Cross number 2 hasn't had his best year because he's banged up. Top 10, right?
Yep.
Watts is
Yes.
probably Watts maybe number 1, if not Jeremiah Love, who we had
Right.
number 9. Riley Leonard. I don't think most people like Riley Leonard as a quarterback, but I'm not.
I
Probably
had
still
I had
have
in my
him in the
top I had in my
10.
top 15 for sure. I didn't do it in order. I just wrote down the 15 best players for the year so far.
Riley
I
Mills.
still have him in my top 10. Just, I mean, given the impact he has overall too, like
Let me
even
read.
if he has mistakes.
Let me read our preseason top 10. Morrison, Cross, Watts, Leonard, Mills, Kaiser, Greathouse, Price, Love at number 9, and then RJ Oben number 10. I think we can all agree that I'm not sure that he's a top 25 guy at this point.
Right. That's the main one that's out of there.
Yeah.
So my top 15, or actually 14, that's weird, alphabetically, were Botello still, because he won't be at the end of the year, but he still is at this point. Jordan Clark, Bo Collins, Howard Cross, Christian Gray, Jack Kaiser, Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, Ben Morrison, Billy Schroff, even in 2.5 games, Adon Schuler, Boubacar Traore, Xavier Watts, and KVA.
Well, we missed on Schuler big time.
Yes, but we knew it
Yeah.
early. We we knew we missed early. We said we're wrong. We threw it out there. We were wrong. Remember, it was like June. We're like, we were wrong about that.
Well, we did. Yeah, we did. But like in fairness, again, we had to vote at the end of April, and we thought Hurd was going to come in and be the starter.
Yeah.
And a credit to, Mickens, that was an open competition, and Schuler won it. I thought Hurd had his best game last week.
Yes, for sure.
That brings some versatility, and he was around the football. I mean, he showed he could play some man. I think that's a real important revelation there and move forward by Hurd. But I don't, I mean, Greathouse wouldn't be in the top 10, although he is second in receiving.
Riley Mills is the real question. They kind of need him to be in the top 10 to finish. Well, they need Riley Leonard to finish in the top 5, but Riley Mills to finish in the top 10 to be an 11-1 team would be my way of putting the Riley Mills.
I don't know what the order would be. I would definitely dump Greathouse, Price, and Oben. I think you guys had Love way too low to begin with, but I've always and then I would add Clark, Gray, and I'm not sure who the other guy. Oh, I actually, Traore would be in my top 10.
Yeah.
Traore is like a top. Traore might be a top 5 player on this
Collins
team,
is there,
which is
Bo
really
Collins
unfortunate.
Collins is definitely in the
Collins
top
is in the
10.
top 10.
Yeah.
Maybe he had his worst game
12.
against Louisville, I guess, which is my only hesitation.
Yeah.
But he in the first 4 games, yes, definitely.
So yeah, my other. What do you guys think about Botello? If you're unless you're penalizing for missing half the season already, but Jordan Botello was easily top 6 when he got hurt.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Like everybody jumped in on the board. Like there are 8 more games to be played. Our opinions are going to be swayed over the next 7 regular season games and at least 1 postseason game.
Not on one of those guys.
Who's that?
RJ Oben's not going to be in the top 10.
No, he's not. No, I don't. He just doesn't. I mean, we misevaluated his skill set because he's not good enough.
Now you
I think
make
we
me
got
look up where I
duped
have
by Javonte Jean-Baptiste having like a anonymous spring last year and being like, it's fine. Like
That might have been it because
Yeah,
they'll
Javante
work
John
out.
Baptiste did
they'll
nothing
find
last
somebody.
spring.
It's like the Nick
Yeah.
McLeod came in May thing. Like, it's fine. We'll work out. It hasn't worked out. I'm shocked about just how ineffective he's been.
He looks heavy.
He does. He does not look like he's in good shape. He does not. And who did I compare him to? The Ethan Johnson, where it looks like he's putting all of his might into movement, and it's more spinning the wheels than actually getting
Man,
up.
I wish
You
he
know,
was Ethan Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And I think he was more proven than Javante Jean Baptiste too. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Was their main guy, whereas before, like, at Ohio State, JJB was behind guys and wasn't really getting that chance to prove himself. And yeah, it's kind of surprising.
Great point by Drew, because JJB was behind a bunch of future All Pros, and RJO was ahead of a bunch of biology majors. So
Right.
good matchup.
Like
Yeah.
Amos Williams couldn't get on the field at Ohio State. Why is that?
Tim, we need to, as we are putting our counting down the Irish at the end of April, start of May, we need to set up where the fans can vote as well, so they can see how dang difficult it is to do it.
Hope the interns are listening. I'm not keeping track of that one.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not for the full-grown adults to do. It's for the interns. Tom, the intern, I'm sure will be right on that. Okay, moving on. Question from future Domer Dad: What will be the portal focus for next year's team? I thought this was a interesting question because, well, look at the roster. You'll understand why I think it's an interesting question.
I mean, if you can't find a defensive tackle,
That's the obvious one.
Unfortunately, you may need to find a defensive end now too.
Well, I think you may have to bring in 2 or 3 defensive linemen.
I think you will, as opposed just instead of wide receivers, you think you bring in 2 or 3 defensive linemen.
Yeah. I mean, make it up. You can start making it known fairly soon that there are going to be spots open. You're not going to give up on some of these guys. Cole Mullins needs to get larger. Heinisch needs to get larger. Mukum needs to be more consistent. Sevillano needs to be in good shape. Devin Houston, we don't know. Gabe Rubio still be. There are a lot of question marks there, man. And Cross and Mills are gone.
Yeah, I do think defensive end could depend on what Jordan Botelho decides and kind of what that process is going to be like in terms of him getting back. Because if he comes back and then you're good with Traore and some of those other young guys, maybe that's not a place they would look to as much as they have in the past, but I'm not really sure there. And then I also think they're going to need they're still going to have to look for wide receivers, especially based on the recruiting class.
They are, because first of all, you're losing 4 and probably Jaden Thomas, I'm going to use the word because I think you might have to do this. Do you overpay for Jaden Thomas to stay, or overpay for the next Chris Mitchell to come in and not be as good as you might have thought he was? Faison Greathouse, KK Smith, Gilbert Saldate, and Cam Williams. Logic has it one of them doesn't stay, man. Even though it seems like they all should.
Yeah.
You're going to need more wide receivers too.
No doubt about it. D-line is number 1.
Yes.
You're not going to spend on a quarterback this time around, so you have some money to. And I can't believe I'm saying those words. You have some money to buy some defensive linemen to beef that up.
Join me, Tim. It's fun.
I was thinking.
Use the word cut people too. It's a lot more fun when you get to do that.
You like that, don't you,
I
Mel?
do like cutting people.
With quarterback, I mean, are they going to need somebody just for depth though? Like, that's something I was thinking. Like, if they're, I mean, we'll see what they do for replacing Deuce Knight now, but even then, like, they might have 2 guys leave. You can't go into.
I wonder if there's somebody they could pull out of the wide receiver room to move over.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. Like, if you just need somebody to help you function in practice, I think you could do a lot worse than Tyler Buckner.
Yeah, you're right. But moving forward, you're probably going to have 3 quarterbacks on your roster more often than you will 4.
It's a miracle to have
Certainly.
4. I think
I know.
4 out of 5 years at least it will be 3 instead of 4.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up, Tim. You want to ask me my question there, but you've
I've researched, yes.
more than I have.
Minutes of research. From Brian739. This is especially for Tim Priester, which is insulting to me. Who is or was a better passer, Riley Leonard or Tony Rice?
It shouldn't be insulting. It just
I'm
means
just kidding.
I'm the old guy in the room.
I used to complain about Tony Rice as a teenager. How could this not be in my wheelhouse? Go ahead.
I like just when you go back and watch the 88 national championship team and the 89 team and what they did on the ground. And we saw Tony over the weekend. It was good to see him, but he couldn't throw the football. He didn't throw the football very well. And I so on the surface I would say Riley Leonard, but Tim, you have a different perspective just because the vast difference in eras that the two quarterbacks have played.
I do. So if you just take ratings from 88 and 2024, which is pretty fair because I'm positive those two quarterbacks played in 88 and 2024. Tony Rice's passer rating would be 20th in the nation right now. Right now would be where they finished the season. And he would be just ahead of, sorry, I clicked off the wrong one. I want to make sure I get this wrong because it's gold. Just ahead of Reggie Slack, Neil O'Donnell, and a guy at Southern Mississippi named Brett Favre. And if you look at his completion percentage, he would be a little bit farther down the list. He would rank 56th ahead of Kerry Conklin, who I think was drafted, Sean Moore of Virginia, and Darnell Dickerson of Pitt. Remember him, Tim? Darnell Dickerson from Pittsburgh?
Oh, yeah.
Passer rating for Riley Leonard right now is 100th. Passer completion for Riley Leonard is actually better comparatively to Tony Rice's. Riley Leonard is, sorry, I wrote this down. I lost it. Is 46th in the nation in pass completion percentage.
Yeah, I was going to
passer
say
rating is 100th.
He's in the upper half of Notre Dame plus their 12 opponents, which I think might surprise some people.
But in 1988, they passed differently. Like Tony Rice was 9 yards per pass attempt too. It'd be nice if Riley Leonard got to 9 yards per pass attempt.
Drew, how much film have you seen of Tony Rice?
Not much. I think I was born on the first game of 1989, so I haven't been alive for much of the Tony Rice era.
And that was Drew's last appearance on this podcast.
Yeah.
Pete, let's see. How old were you when
I was 11? So I can't say that I remember a whole lot about Tony Rice, the passer.
And yet,
I did see him around town on Friday night, though. And
yeah, I saw him Saturday.
Great guy, good hang.
I remember the bowl games they played in under him. Does that count for anything?
And the thing is, yes, it does. And the thing is that regardless how inefficient he was throwing the football, he was still one of the great quarterbacks in the history of Notre Dame. And Lou Holtz knew that the first time he saw film of the high school quarterback from South Carolina. So great college football player, great dude. Glad we had a chance to catch up with him. We have some new videos on Irish Illustrated's YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. We want you to check us out. Please follow, subscribe, and share with your friends. And also subscribe to irishillustrated.com. Thanks for joining us today. Tim Priester, Tim O'Malley, Drew Mentok, and Pete Sampson. This has been Irish Illustrated Insider.